Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Film Fanclub show. I am your host, Sam Carrico, and tonight we're diving deep into the chaotic, satirical world of The Boys. You know, the show where superheroes are just as likely to start a PR scandal as they are to save a cat from a tree. Seriously, if cat rescue were a corporate gig, these heroes would be handing out business cards before the fire engine arrived. I can just hear them now. Hey, don't forget to follow me on social media for more behind-the-scenes kitty rescues. Now, if you're familiar with the series, you know it's a twisted universe where superheroes are, let's just say, a little bit less than super. We're talking about a narrative that boldly examines the dark sides of fame and power, where the line between heroism and villainy are not only blurred, but seem to vanish entirely. The characters are vividly flawed, driven by greed, ambition, and a desperate need for control, all while the world looks on in a mix of awe and terror. I mean, it's kind of like watching a Batmobile crash in slow motion. You just can't look away. This show is a captivating critique of our obsession with celebrity culture, media manipulation, and how those in power can twist narratives to serve their interests. But here's the thing. As engaging and explosive as The Boys is, there's something deeper lurking beneath the surface. Unearthed gems of meaning that resonate even more profoundly. What I mean is, this series doesn't just tackle current events, it reflects on the nature of rebellion and struggle against oppressive systems. It poses profound questions about accountability, loyalty, and what it truly means to stand up against authority, whether for noble reasons or otherwise. I mean, how many of us have felt like we're just a number in a system at one point in our lives? And as I dive deeper into this discussion, it reminds me a lot of the movie V for Vendetta. Yes, V for Vendetta, the 2005 cinematic masterpiece that felt like a shot of espresso for the soul. A film that takes us through a dystopian landscape eerily fitting for today's world. It expertly illustrates the consequences of apathy and the power of dissent. In a world where the government uses fear to keep its citizens in check, we meet V. He's a revolutionary who embodies the spirit of defiance. He's like Robin Hood, but with a mask and a flair for the dramatic. The film doesn't just deliver action, it provides an unforgettable protagonist who urges us to reclaim our voices, confront injustice, and challenge those in power who think they're untouchable. There are a lot of similarities between The Boys and V for Vendetta, but here's the difference. While V for Vendetta skillfully weaves a cautionary tale that resonates even today, predicting events that unfolded recently, lately, The Boys feels more like a collection of headlines dropped into a blender, a commentary on current events that have already happened, or hell, are still happening. Remember 2020? The protests, the pandemic that shook the world to its core? V for Vendetta didn't just tap into these themes after the fact. It's like it foresaw them 15 years in advance. It captured the essence of societal discontent and the urgency needed to stand up against tyranny years before it became palpable reality for many of us. Meanwhile, on The Boys, you've got Homelander strutting around like a direct parody of Donald Trump in 2024, which honestly comes off more like lazy writing than cutting-edge satire. It's as if The Boys just glanced at reality, shrugged its shoulders, and said, let's just tweak it a little and call it a day. And while The Boys has its merits, showcasing the absurd extremes of heroism, V for Vendetta packs a philosophical punch that can make any existentialist weep. It's about more than just defeating villains. It's about rekindling that spirit of defiance within us all. The sharp critiques of systemic oppression and the imperative of reclaiming your voice resonate loudly, not just on screen, but also in the echo chambers of our modern lives. V for Vendetta embodies the essence of rebellion, igniting a flame that truly moves audiences to think critically about authority and our responses to it. And while The Boys gives us thrilling chaos, V for Vendetta challenges us to consider these broader implications. And that's a narrative that's just hard to ignore. So sit tight as we delve into the outrageous world of The Boys, but remember, as you enjoy the spectacle, keep an eye open for those eye-opening parallels. And after all, as the saying goes, life imitates art, and in today's world, there's a lot of both to go around. As we navigate through the absurdities of our time, let's not forget the lessons beneath the laughter. Who knows? You might just emerge from this episode with a newfound resolve to challenge the status quo, or at the very least, to consider who really wears the pants or capes in today's society. All right, we've got a great show for you lined up. Let's get right to our discussion of Season 4 of The Boys. All right, let's welcome tonight's guests. We got two returning guests from the Mission Matinee podcast, which, of course, is part of the Film Fan Club network of podcasts. John, Lein, Alex McKellar, welcome back to the Film Fan Club show.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I want to thank you guys for taking the time to wear the same outfit as the last time we were on, so that the fit works.
Continuity.
Continuity is important. It's important.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about The Boys today. We've previously talked about The Boys in a bonus live stream / podcast that Alex and I did, but since then, John, you've gotten caught up on The Boys. I don't think you were quite caught up on it back whenever we had previously talked about it. So I want to throw to you first. Now that since we don't have you on the record on this show yet, I'd like to get your, having just finished season 4, what is your impression of this show?
It's pretty good.
You like the commentary?
Puts on the glasses, becomes a whole different person. He's like, really, I want to talk about the entity. I want to talk about how Tom Cruise is the dad.
Yeah, Sean Anders is his brother.
Yeah, as a brother. All the family relations in the Mission franchise. I'm excited.
I like The Boys. It's good. It's always really well done. It's funny. It's got good action. I feel like I have a pattern every season where I start watching it, and the first few episodes I'm like, what a refreshing take. It's refreshing to have something like The Boys back. And then 3 episodes in, 4 episodes in, I go, okay, I'm a little tired. It's very cynical. It's funny, but also oh my God, anybody be human to each other. And then the last few episodes, I kind of get back on it. It cycles around, like that video of the race car noise, the try not to laugh thing, where it's 5 minutes of a guy going, brum, 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 brum. It gets funny, stops being funny, gets funny again. But it's good. I like it.
Do you see any change in quality over the 4 seasons?
No, I mean, I think maybe in these later 2 seasons, maybe they got a little bit more blunt about it, about its ideals and how it thinks and feels about things. But I don't think it shifted in quality. I think they just got away from the comic book origin and kind of made it a little bit more specific.
That's fair. I do think on the nose is how I would put it. It becomes a little on the nose. Starting a little bit last season, definitely this season. I like the show overall. I would recommend our bonus podcast that Alex and I did for a more thorough review of the first 3 seasons. Alex, I want to ask you though. You and I obviously talked about the first 3 seasons. How has this new season affected your opinion of the overall show? Does this season change in quality for previous seasons for you? How does it hit you?
I didn't notice a dip in quality. I mean, I think sort of that same thing of the first season, having not known anything about the comic, was surprising in its over the top violence, the links it was going to. And so it's that's a feeling that can't really be recaptured in any of the later seasons. There were elements that I think I liked better in other seasons. I really liked Soldier Boy last season, but it's this season I thought still was good. I didn't, if any, it's maybe it's okay, that sure, I don't like some of these plot beats as much, but the show didn't feel like it had taken a dramatic step down or anything like that. You know what I mean? It still felt like The Boys. You still got Carl Urban, you still got over the top violence. Still absolutely adore Anthony Starr as Homelander.
Yeah,
he's incredible, and enjoyed. We could go through it more. A lot of the stuff they were doing. I don't know. I could kind of see maybe it feeling a little more on the nose, but at the same time, I feel like it had been doing a lot of this style of commentary throughout, and maybe more so, if anything, more so now, just at first it was somewhat of a hyper parody of the political situation, but our own world has gotten so wacky and wild that creating political parody of that is almost impossible. So just sort of leaning into like, yeah, there's a QAnon section. There's a this reference. There's a this reference. This person is that. It's like our world is as monstrous and ridiculous as The Boys is, but just without superheroes. So like, what do you do to like satire that without actually calling attention? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That, like, so in some ways it's like, yeah, they like took reality and they rubbed the serial numbers off so they could change the names of like things going on.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like this show is already satirizing like the neoliberal like brand politics for a long time and the rise of like far right Christian nationalist movements. And like as that's gone on in our own world, you know, it's like maybe now it feels a little more like South Park because they're writing from the real world a slight bit more. But like I don't think the politics has changed at all. And, you know, it's only on the nose because our reality is crazy.
I guess, yeah, that's my where I'm kind of wrestling with it. It does feel a little bit more on the nose this season. Some things do make me roll my eyes just by how, like, it's like you just took it straight from the news and put it in your show and tried to make it clever. But also, you make a good point that, like, the news headlines today are so crazy. You know, what a time to say that, other than in, you know, July, August of 2024. And is the quality dipping with these more on the nose storylines? I don't really think so. I do enjoy the show, and I'm looking forward to next season. Season 5 is going to be the last season. I think season 4 was a pretty solid season with a lot of big moments, big exciting things happening. It didn't really let me down. It didn't feel like a chore to watch, like a lot of things. We talked about The Acolyte recently. The Acolyte they're both 8. It's really kind of funny. This and The Acolyte, both 8 episodes long, both continuing a saga, whether it be Star Wars or the Boys universe, like keep continuing something that's existed for a while. And I was so much more invested in this show, and I think that's a testament to the overall quality of the show, and then continuing that through this season. Yeah, I liked it. That's my immediate reaction. Is there anything you guys want to say off the top, or any directions you want to go in before we start talking about some of the storylines of this season?
Did you like or dislike the really quick joke about the release the Burke cut again?
It must have been really quick because I don't remember that.
It just like came up on screen in like a transitional montage. They make a joke. So you know how Will Ferrell is making that Blindside superhero movie with A-Train?
Yes.
There's a really quick little screenshot of a tweet of X, whatever they're called now. It pops up and it's got a hashtag from the guy who was directing that movie that was like, release the Burke cut again, which is a clear reference to release the Snyder cut. And I was like, I wonder how Sam felt about that joke.
Went right over his head. I mean, it's like with that, like one, I love the Will Ferrell Blindside movie, but like there's so like again, like I want to rewatch this show because there's like so many of those little moments going on, you know, and like that's the other part where it's like, has this gotten too on the nose? It's like they were making jokes about like how fans interact with like Marvel and DC culture and the other ones. I forget what season, but they remade the Pepsi commercial, you know, the Jenner Pepsi like it's always been pretty on the nose in some way, shape, or form. I think now we're just somewhat getting mad because like they all they did was like maybe remove the last final layer of that like distance you could have that like, oh, this is like, Homelander might be, but he's also cool. You know what I mean? He's like not the one-to-one like a Trump parallel, which I don't think he still is. I think it's just like, if we are going to talk about the figurehead for this like American Christian like fascism that's rising, like that's going to be the closest parallel we can draw. There are still differences, obviously, between him and like Trump or whatever figure, but
Homelander still has a full head of hair.
Yeah.
Since we're just going straight for that, you know, what I said before we started talking about the Boys, you know, on stream, I appreciated that at the end of season 3, there's that clear parallel. You and I kind of got there at the same time when we were doing our bonus episode. It was one of those lightning in a bottle, once in a lifetime moments that just two geniuses can have on a stream. Happened at the same time. I can shoot somebody in Fifth Avenue and people would still vote for me, and then Homelander does the equivalent. they didn't literally say we're going to make America great again. We didn't literally say we're going to make America super again. They didn't literally say, "Hey, I'm Donald Trump." It let you get there. You know, it let you kind of put the pieces together, and you kind of got there, like we did on that
They
stream.
didn't have who was Storm Chaser? They didn't have Storm Chaser say, "Let's make America super again" or something like that in season 3.
Not that I can recall, but it's been
Yeah.
2 years since I've seen it.
Right. I get. It's like some of it. I get like the visceral reaction of feeling like maybe The Boys is more on the nose, but like I also think that that's sort of, that's a thing of like we haven't rewatched the other ones, you know, and we're back in the election cycle, the politically charged cycle, all of that stuff. Because like I remember that first season, like when I rewatched it in the lead up for us to talk about season 3, I like when I very first time watched it, I at the beginning was like, oh, this is a cool superhero show. Like I wasn't looking at like the commentary that felt more subtle, but like it's not even that subtle, really. You know, like Homelander's at a like Christian rally flying over in an American cape. Like he's stoking the same things that were being stoked in America already. You know what I mean? It's like I don't think like maybe some things more on the nose, but also like where we go one, where we go Vought, like it's like that, maybe a little clunky, but also deeply hilarious, like doing it. You know what I mean? Like to show that like the QAnon types, like the far fringed conspiracy types, are now the mainstream talking points. I think is like, how else do you interact with our current media environment? Because like that has happened, like Steve Bannon back in the day was taken from like relative obscurity as like a far right person online cultivating the next generations of Nazis and put in the presidential cabinet for a time. You know what I mean? Like maybe like this was slightly more rushed and getting away from the source material more, like those passes of like clevering it up weren't able to be done. But it's like, this is what The Boys has always been. It's always been punching at this like neoliberal far right, like again, Vought being Disney type of thing since the beginning.
And we're big brains for getting there. So anyway,
big brain, we're big brain boys. Ooh, there we go.
Big brain boys discussing The Boys. Hey, should we start talking about some storylines? The first one.
Let's do that.
What did you guys think of Hughie's dad's storyline this season, Alex?
Oh man, it was good. Sorry, I was about to jump. Like I was like, the end part got me pretty good. Again, I enjoy Simon Pegg in this role. I wish we had gotten to see it maybe a little bit more, but I think it was effective. Like Hughie is caught up. His dad is still that kind of like, just like, come on, man. Like what? Like I'm out here trying to save the world. Why are you talking to me about novels or TV? You know what I mean? Like it's that interesting, like adult child parent relationship to where it's just like, I love you, but like this is like time consuming and not what's important to me. And then for Hughie to have to like face that with his dad having the stroke and then bringing the mom character back, like all of that stuff I thought was like solid character development and struggle for Hughie. I really enjoyed all of it. I also really liked that his mom was like an essential oils sales like pyramid scheme woman for Vought. Like Vought owns everything. They even have their like grifter essential oils thing. Like, I mean, again, The Boys is still taking shots at what might be considered like a left-leaning,
that's right,
a leftist thing. But it's like, that's why I was so confused why we got so mad this season. But it's whatever.
John, I'm going to throw to you about Hughie's storyline with his dad, but also I'm going to throw on top of that, right after the storyline with his dad comes to a conclusion. The very next episode, he is subjected to a lot of sexual torture, and it's presented in a way that's funny. We're supposed to laugh at it kind of a little bit. At least that's the way a lot of people are taking it under that premise. How do you feel about how they handled Hughie's? I'm throwing red meat right out at the audience. What do you think about the way they handled Hughie's storyline? They tortured him sexually because male rape is funny. Right after his dad died.
I really liked the dad arc, that narrative, because you asked me to do both, right? So let's
Yes,
start with one. I liked his stuff with his dad. Simon Pegg is great. The whole, the whole like a super abled person with like an Alzheimer's-esque sort of like mental issue where he forgets where he is, and the idea of having a person like that have the capacity to move through solid matter and materialize within that matter, like that the bit where he like runs through the wall and runs in halfway into a guy and then solidifies, and that guy just and he's like turning around and shit's falling out of the guy. It's like brutal and like effectively horrifying. I was watching that and I was like, oh, you have to do you gotta like put a bullet in Simon Pegg. You gotta kill him. And
they adequately show you there's no other option. Like before.
Yeah. And it also functions as a like, you know, the in the previous season, right? Hughie and Butcher get superpowers. And we kind of get a bit of an examination about how like power corrupts and warps morality because you suddenly have that unchecked power and you start doing whatever you want, right? They take that to another level with Simon Pegg's getting superpowers, because it's not like he's not making a conscious choice to use his unchecked power violently. He just has power and doesn't know how to control it. And he's responding. He's like, I don't know where I am. I just materialized inside a person and I'm covered in blood. I don't know what's happening. I'm just reacting. And he has all that power. And so even though it's not necessarily him having his morality warped by his ability to act on his instincts, it still is dangerous and bad for an individual to have that kind of power. I think is an interesting development of that theme.
And it speaks, this is exactly what you're saying, but to paraphrase, it speaks to a larger theme about how, like, in real life, superheroes and superpowers would just be absolutely horrifying and terrible. like this power fantasy that we've always had, that we've all had since we're kids, would actually just be horrifying if the world was like that. And this is a different way to manifest that. But I'm curious to hear your reaction to the second part, how they reward Hughie for his tragedy.
You know, they play it as a joke, but they also play it as gross and uncomfortable and violating. Like it is. I was watching it and I was laughing, but I wasn't laughing because it was funny as much as I was laughing because it was a little funny and also uncomfortable as shit. And so my like gut response to uncomfortable shit is to be like, what? So it like, you know, so I think it was fucked, but then they also have a moment where he's talking to Starlight afterwards, and he goes, I was actually just like really fucked uply violated sexually, and I'm not okay. But then they just kind of have to blow past it because other shit comes up. And then they just have to keep going because his trauma from that experience is something that is affecting him, but something that he doesn't have the time or capacity to address. And then they double down on it later with the shapeshifter Starlight, right?
Right.
That's a huge violation.
And then she's mad at him for it.
I mean, for like half a second, right? She's mad at him for one scene when she expresses her own.
She should have immediately apologized to him.
She basically did. The next time she talks to him, she's like, you know, get tested for STDs, but because the next time,
which is like a tacit way of saying we're still gonna sleep together, like you know, like which is like everything's okay, haha, wink,
and he
wink.
does a
like, no, Hughie, you deserve.
It will be interesting to see if season 5 addresses it, right? Because here's the thing: when a TV show has a known definite end point.
Yes.
The writers, I am more willing to trust that the writers are going to close everything, bring all of their themes to some sort of conclusion. You know, for The Acolyte, right? I don't really trust that season 2 is going to full circle close thematic loops, because it without a confirmed ending.
Yeah.
Right, they can just keep making seasons forever. The Boys said, we're doing season 5 and that's it. And I'm like, okay, well, they're good writers so far, and they have an ending. They have an out date. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and be like, maybe they're going to address it. Because they do kind of touch on it, and then they move past it because there are bigger things at play. And it'll be interesting to see if like season 5 has a point where Hughie is like fucked up again and has to they do something with it. I don't know what they would do with it. But yeah, I don't know. I'm willing to give them the chance to do something reasonable with it without just being like, that's fucked up that a man being sexually violated isn't addressed as a bigger deal.
Right.
Alex, I'd like to throw back to you now that we've added a little bit to the discussion of Hughie's storyline this season, and John also threw in the shapeshifter storyline. So yeah, I didn't even consider before when I originally brought up the discussion topic, but yeah, double whammy. Yeah, he gets the Tech Knight incident and then the shapeshifter incident. The Shuey really treats Hughie pretty bad after he's gone through a lot this season. What do you think about all that, topping it off with the shapeshifter?
I mean, similar camp to John. I mean, you know, again, sort of addressed it somewhat. It's like that first one, it's like Hughie is ignoring trauma, and then he's put in this horrific thing, and like it's used in a way to like get him to try to engage with how actually fucked up he is about his dad's death and everything that happened. I mean, and then it was messed up, and treated somewhat as messed up, not as much with the whole shapeshifter bit. So, you know, I am hopeful. I am a little worried that it might not be like taken as seriously in season 5. But again, just, you know, we get this whole realization in the finale, and like the thing that they want to resolve is, are Hughie and Starlight gonna stay together? You know, so it becomes again still also part of this being while clunky because of like we're maybe ignoring like the effect it had on Hughie, but like the shapeshifter stuff seemed to me, which is why I'm a little bit worried that we might not get it addressed. It seemed more to me like addressing Starlight's like uncertainty in who she is and what she's supposed to be. You know, like throughout this whole thing, like she is rejecting the identity of Starlight now. She's just Annie January. She doesn't want to be, you know, use her like superhero persona for popularity to fight in like the popularity arena. You know, she just wants to be Annie January, you know, and so we have the Starlighters going on, all of this stuff with that like building throughout the whole season, sort of culminating in now the shapeshifter being for Hughie and Annie's mind the perfect girlfriend. You know what I mean? And Annie struggling with like, you know, I don't always like I'm not ever gonna always feel like being like sexually available all the time. You know, like I'm depressed and all that stuff. So what makes me worried that we won't take Hughie's side of that as seriously is that like that all of those beats felt to me more of this like other way of examining Starlight and Starlight finding out who she is and like is she valued for more than just like being attractive and all this stuff to Hughie. You know what I mean? So as far as like again the violation that Hughie experienced, hopefully it gets addressed. It deserves to be addressed, but all of that shapeshifter stuff seemed more to be about Annie and her character arc this season, dealing with, you know, especially with Firecracker being a girl that did the pageants with her in the past, and like the horrific things that Annie was doing as a like teen to be the best, and be in this arena, and then now trying to be good while having done bad things in the past, and those being brought up, those being used against her. And also, it being shown to the world when she is pushed to the brink and fights Firecracker on camera as a part of Sage's plan. Again, like Sage, we can get into it more, but it's like, if these people just stopped and thought for a little bit about the other team having the smartest person on the planet, I feel like they could have avoided a few different traps this season. But instead, they're just like, no, we can outsmart this clear trap that we're about to fall into. But that's neither here nor there. But so I don't know. I do hope that it does get addressed because, like Hughie, there's Hughie got violated sexually a lot this season. And, also like Hughie, a lot of times, is just like put into horrific situations and then is just sort of like, by the nature of the fact that the people around him are already like from the world of hyper violence and whatever, it's kind of just forced to like move past. Like there is some examination in earlier seasons of Hughie coming to terms with like the violence and the horrific things going on. But also Hughie, a lot of times, is just someone who like has to like move past it, but then also like through that is able to reconnect and become like the moral voice for these other people in his life. So I don't know. We'll see. And some of this stuff, it's like I binged it so fast and may have snoozed here and there because watching it late at night. I would, I'll rewatch this season again probably soon.
Don't show your cards like that. I watched this whole season 3 times. I
just want to say that like there's potentially subtext that I missed and other little things, because that's how I felt when I rewatched season 1 and 2. Was that I was like, oh, this is stuff that I've missed.
John, I have another thought about it too.
Okay, go ahead.
Give us that thought, and then also Alex talked a little bit about how it ties into Annie's storyline. So I was also going to ask you about Annie's storyline broadly, but let's hear your thought.
Well, my thought is kind of like tangentially related to that. So It's another one of those like, if The Boys is a commentary on reality, in reality as it exists, sexual violation of men is more broadly ignored. So if the show is making itself a mirror to reality, it would make sense for the show, for the characters within that show to kind of blow past it. The Starlight gets the Me Too movement element of her earlier seasons, and then in this season the Deep explicitly goes, Me Too happened, it failed, fuck you. Or the Deep, what did I say? Did I say the Deep?
Yeah, you said the Deep.
The Deep has that line that is explicitly like, Me Too failed, you lost, I'm still in power. And so for the show to then kind of blow past Hughie's sexual violation, it is a sort of a bummer, but that in and of itself functions intentionally or not as a commentary on the fact that the way that the real world talks about and thinks about sexual violence against men is a bummer. So maybe it's intentional. I don't know. I'm also reading into
John got back to the big brain take, baby. The big brain boys talking the boys.
I feel like the show, that's going to be the name of the episode, Big Brain Boys Talking the Boys. That's the. I'm glad I don't have to think about that any further. I don't know if the show just doing that trope of ignoring sexual violence against men is like it satirizing it. I think it's more so the show just falling into that trap a little bit. But I like where your head's at, John. I was going to remind you, Annie has a little bit of an arc this season. Who is she? Who is Annie January?
It's that element of the narrative is interesting. It touches on some of like, I have not always been a conscientious, empathetic person trying to take other people's feelings and thoughts and ideals and identities into account. Mm-hmm. I am a white dude who was raised in the suburbs of Texas. I have a past of being a dickhead. And in the same way that Annie is trying to come to grips with her past of being involved, however tangentially, in the things that she is now fighting against and doesn't like, she has to come to terms with the fact that she did take part in them. She was shaped by a system of the pageants or whatever of her mom to be shitty to other people, and she was then shitty to other people. And so now, as a more matured adult, the instinct is to be like, well, that wasn't me because the system made me do that. But there's an element of it. Yes, the system shaped me to be that way, but the system shaping me to be that way doesn't absolve me of responsibility for behaving that way. And I have to come to a point where I can both acknowledge my role in that without hating myself the way that Kimiko and Frenchie, their arc in this season was that they were so self-loathing based on the things they did in systems that even more explicitly did not allow them to do anything else. Yeah. And they have to find a way to forgive themselves, or at the very least acknowledge that just because they did that doesn't mean they are that person now. But the fact that they are that person now doesn't absolve them of responsibility for being that person before. So I'm curious to see how those themes get resolved in the next season too.
Yeah, I mean, as you were talking, I was definitely like it's a good connection, the Kimiko and Frenchie, and then even like Butcher's like arc of like having the two voices in his mind, which again we could jump around or we could stick on a certain topic, I don't know, but like again like that connection of like forgiveness for like past transgressions versus like your worst impulses, and like all of those things is like a big thing that this season is or like one of the themes this season is like interrogating, because you got Butcher hearing Becca, and like for a while starts to lean in to that sort of more forgiveness, hopeful side, and then you have I think his name's Kessler. That's like his dark side, like like, oh no, like fuck all soups, you got to kill every one of them, or like the line I love, what's a little genocide between friends, just like god damn dude, woo. But yeah, so like pretty much everyone, and even MM struggling with that sort of like, who are we, like what are our values, like what is the person we actually are, like he's clearly going through, and I don't remember enough of the earlier seasons to like get to this setup of his like I remember some of the panic attack stuff and like his like losing weight or whatever, but it's like what all was bringing that about. But then him again having to sort of deal with like, do I go with my family and like abandon the cause, or do I stick to the cause and like try to do the best I can, to protect them? Like there's a lot of those sort of themes and stuff going on. And again with Hughie having to decide whether he wants to forgive his mom or not, and like also then having to struggle with like, oh, he did choose to ignore his dad's phone call. Like there's a lot of that little like the decisions we made in the past having bigger ramifications than like we may have ever expected, and having to have those interrogated and like make peace with them. But like, how do you do that on like the huge level? Obviously Frenchie and Kimiko, and I like where they ended up of like, just try a little bit each day to like forgive yourself, and move forward and be better. And I do think and hope that all of those threads will continue. I mean, I feel like a lot of them have to into season 5, but I don't know yet. But I do like. I was gonna say I do now want to rewatch all of The Boys based off like just the beginning of this conversation. So, yes.
Yeah, I also on Bill the Butcher, it's interesting that his darker impulse persona is a person who worked with him and like mentored him in the system that made him cynical and destructive and violent, and it's what I want, what allowing myself to think about what could be. What I want is for the show to examine both individual responsibility and the systems that in which we live and their responsibility over the things that we do and the actions that we take. Just because that's a thing that I think about a lot.
Yeah. Well, I think the show's been doing that since the beginning to varying degrees. Like one thing, I'm pretty sure it's season 3. Season 3 is like the big popularity contest between Homelander and Starlight. Or is that season 2? Okay, yeah. Like what I really liked about that was, again, like the different examinations of power. Like obviously we have superheroes that have power, and like that's one level of examination. And then you have Stan Edgar has power through like competency, but we also examine how that, isn't like the best way to assign power. Is like, what are you competent in? Like, oh, he's an efficient an efficient manager of capitalist resources and a horrific monster while doing it. Like, sure, he keeps Vought towing the line, but he's also like been injecting children with this serum to make superheroes. He's rigging elections. He's doing all of this horrific stuff. But yeah, like, sure, he's competent at it. Is that what we want? Is like, are the in examining this? And then in that season, we also have popularity as a form of power being manipulated. You have like Stormfront helping Homelander, use his less savory at the beginning, popularity to consolidate more power. And then you have Starlight attempting to use her popularity to have more power. And then now she's sort of like stepped away. Amy January stepped away from the Starlight persona, but yet is still benefiting from like the charities and the foundations, like trying to do work for her. So it's been, it'll be interesting to see how all of these threads continue out and what they're done with, or with season 5. But again, like you just have all of these different like examinations of like the system, the material conditions, all of that sort of being taken to task throughout the series. But will we, are we going to get a V for Vendetta where it's like, aha, we've destroyed the system? Or are we going to see a bit of, V for Vendetta part 2? What do they do the day after the revolution? Like, oh, like cool, that. You could bring the system down, but like, what is the next day? What is the morning after we've won? I
like that. Yeah, I like that you brought it back to the monologue. I need to write that monologue, don't I? What do you think about the Deep burying the last bit of his humanity this season in a brutal scene where he kills Tilda Swinton, who played an octopus?
I really enjoyed that scene.
Oh wow!
It's another one of those things that's like it was both fucked and funny, and the fucked upness made like I laughed at the funny part of it, and then kind of felt weird that I was laughing at it, and then giggled at that sense of uncomfortableness with how I was viewing it. Like the 3 times they do the gasping death rattle.
Yeah.
The Deep goes, oh, thank God it's over. And then her voice comes back, right? And he has to like freak out again. And I think the second time they did it, I was like, okay, enough. And then they did it the third time and I laughed again. It was just like the race car thing again. And then I like it cuts from that, right, to the Deep not listening to anything Homelander is saying, and then looking at Homelander and going, I will kill every fish in the ocean if you ask me to. And that shift, almost like making Homelander uncomfortable. Like Homelander has this like, okay.
Like, okay.
Whatever, dude.
It's like, I really enjoyed how this season dealt with the minions under Homelander. Neo Noir, I really loved everything they did with Neo Noir. I loved everything they did with the Deep. I think there were in the middle seasons they did things with the Deep where I was like, oh, the Deep could learn and grow and become a better human being. And now it's like, oh no, he's despicable, and I hope by the end of the show they've killed him somehow.
For sure. Alex, on the flip side, if you want to mention the Deep, you can talk about the Deep as well, but I want to also bring in to the fold, A-Train goes on the opposite direction. He speeds in the opposite direction, some might say.
Got him.
And I like it, kind of like John's talking about. It examines the different minions, in different ways, and the different directions that you can go if you are involved in a cult like this.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think I think why both of those arcs work really well is because of how well developed like Deep and A Train are in the seasons leading up. Like both A Train and Deep start off with like doing horrific things, and then both of them are like sent through this gauntlet of like fear of Homelander, having to appease the system, doing things that make them uncomfortable, playing the PR role versus who they are, their own internal view of themselves. And then, yeah, we see them in this season, both semi-presented at like different times with the choice to just leave and get away from this horrific mess. And both knowing that's not fully possible, but then each making their own decision based on, like their arcs throughout multiple seasons at this point to either just like, yeah, I'll be a bootlicker for this crazy guy, or, it might kill me, but like I am going to fight this somehow. Like with A Train specifically, I really appreciated, like we get the moment where his brother is telling A Train's nephews that like none of what his heroics was ever real. He's never saved a single person.
Right.
And then he saves MM, and just one kid looks at him like a real hero, and like that was enough for A Train to sort of like not hate himself anymore. You know what I mean? Or like
the corner kind of
the light at the end of that tunnel of like, oh, I don't have to be a despicable person. I'm not entirely trapped within this omnipresent system. Like it can feel good, and I can respect myself by doing something good. And the Deep doesn't make that decision to run away with his, the love of his life, Tilda Swinton, as an octopus. He is still caught up in this whole thing, and then decides to double down and, once, like, I guess, in a sense, like you could get into like, the real Deep versus the performance Deep. I don't think those distinctions actually matter, but like the Deep is still insecure and disgusted by himself. Like he can't commit to being in love with this fish creature, even though he is this octopus, because he also still wants that, like we see it there before he kills that last guy. He wants to be seen as cool and popular and funny. He's just a slightly weaker version of Homelander. He wants to be that, and like he's like, I know you're lying because you're scared, but you know what? That's good enough for me. And like, so yeah, I really loved the like arcs of both of those characters, and yeah, like we touched on a little bit. I also loved Black Noir this season. Like having forgotten for a brief moment that he had been killed and was now being played. But I also love that it's the exact same actor playing Black Noir still. I think that's great. What a fun thing to have been silent for so long and now get to just be like, bro, that was fucked when they killed the home teamers, the QAnon dudes.
He said that line, and I was like, "Whoa, he's
they caught me up. And I was like, "Oh yeah, the original Black Noir is fully dead, and they just gotta stand in."
That's
narcoleptic.
Yeah, the narcolepsy, the constantly telling him like you don't speak, you don't have any lines. Like he's like, how do I get into this character? Like,
what's my motivation? Yeah.
Him flying at the end was so fucking random, but I loved it. Like,
obviously. Well, there's a line earlier in the season where he's like, I can fly. I can fly, right? I have superpowers. And they're all like, shut up. Black Noir couldn't fly. Stop talking.
Yeah. And it's awesome. And like the meta level of how funny it is that like he played a character that didn't talk for so long and is now playing an actor playing that character and being like, but I don't know my motivations, man. Like, what do I do? You just shut the fuck up. You just don't talk.
All those little bits where he was like, he lived in a ninja dojo, but as far as I can tell, didn't know karate. Like all those little bits of information we get about the original Black Noir through the new Black Noir. I really love all those bits. They're great.
Yeah, it was
very funny.
Super well done.
Do we jump into the big guy, the big boy talking to the boys about the big boy? Homelander himself, his storyline this season, because it ties into a lot to the everything being so on the nose for this season. We start off with the trial, and I thought that was going to be an ongoing storyline, but we handle it episode 1. We interrogate Homelander's past a little bit in I thought a really solid episode where he's like torturing those people in the lab. And then, of course, he is teaming up with Newman to try and overthrow the government on January 6th. And, of course, he's going to assassinate the president-elect. And I guess tying into that is the disclaimer the last episode gave us. I'm sure you guys all saw it, too, where it says, hey, this is all any resemblance to real events is purely coincidental. And I was like, any resemblance? I don't know about any.
Happens to have our plan 2 take place on January 6th.
Yeah, I'm like
shots of the house verifying the vote.
Right. I'm like, any resemblance. I don't know about that, but I don't know. It's so funny. I understand. Yeah, you don't want to act like you're condoning political violence in any way. I understand that. I totally understand that. But yeah, it's a little silly. It just felt a little silly. But what do you guys have to say?
Do you think that was because of Jan 6? I assumed that was because of the assassinations attempt at Trump.
That's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like
making a joke about the way
fair enough. Sorry.
The word any resemblance to real events is coincidental, and that's just not true. Like any resemblance to any real events, like. I mean, maybe that's another meta layer bit, big brain bit, like all of these movies and TV shows that are like, like South Park's opening, where it's like it's all fictional, it's written by dumbasses. So don't like
take
the
it.
beginning, the beginning of 500 Days of Summer, except especially you, Jenny whatever bitch. I can't remember the name of 500 Days of Summer. It wasn't Jenny Nicholson. I almost said that, and I was like, "Oh shit, I don't want to call." I love her videos. What is it? 500 Days of Summer. Anyways,
I can't help you with that one.
John, Homelander's storyline this season. What'd you think about all that? And then touching on just a coincidence.
This is another. I keep saying it. It feels like the Mission Impossible podcasts, where I just every time I was like, I really liked that. His like graying hair, him having to come to grips with the fact that he is invulnerable but not immortal. His pubes are falling out in his underwear, and his response to that is to put them in a jar until by the end of the season his jar is full of gray pubes, and he has a moment where he looks at the jar that's full of pubes and goes, disgusting. Like, he comes to the realization that the way that he was coping with that realization was pathetic and gross. But his response then is probably going to double down into not caring about it at all because he is the ultimate authority in the universe, right? He's going to double down on his I am superior, so I don't have to worry about the fact that I'm getting older. I liked his whole relationship with Ryan. There's this element to Homelander's character where, like, him having a kid could have, if the show wasn't cynical, could have done a thing where having a child and having to think about the world that he's leaving for his child makes him considerate of the way he's shaping the world around himself. But they clearly are going a different direction. He's just going to be Soldier Boy, right? Soldier Boy's relationship towards Homelander as Soldier Boy's son is going to be replicated in Homelander's relationship towards Ryan.
Yeah.
And all of that is building towards season 5 having what I hope is going to be a focus on Ryan. Because where Ryan went at the end of this season is a mystery. He said, I don't want to be at Vought Tower because I don't feel safe and I can't be myself around Homelander. But also, Grace and the CIA and the people who want to take me away from there only want to take me away from there to use me as a weapon of violence against my own dad. And then he kills Grace.
Yeah.
This time intentionally killing someone after having accidentally killed somebody earlier, right? The stuntman. And then he goes off on his own. And I want to see what Ryan does in regards to how this has all shaped him as a developing person. because Ryan felt to me like the sort of like stand-in for the modern youth generation. I mean, obviously he is because he's one of the only children in the show, but it's just interesting to examine how he, as a character, examines everything going on around him.
The show clearly has to end with Ryan and Homelander fighting in the White House lawn, on the White House lawn, right, Alex?
Oh yeah, obviously that's where it's gonna go. It's gonna be.
I haven't read the source material, so I don't know.
Yeah, it's gonna be Soldier Boy and Homelander, Ryan and Butcher, just a huge. There's gonna be a blue laser going up, big, bombastic, climactic fight scene right there, White House lawn all around. Yeah, that's for sure what's gonna happen.
I mean, that just feels like what it's building towards.
If it all ends in a blue laser that destroys all life on Earth,
that would be a wild.
We superhero nuke ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I think it is potentially building up to Ryan fighting Homelander, but I also think kind of not, because a lot of this, I mean, so we have all of these different like levels of how these people were raised and their parents and the interactions with them going on, the generational trauma, Butcher with his dad, being just a real piece of shit, and him hating him, but then like Butcher being kind of redeemed with this part of him, personified as Becca, and then her love for Ryan, and having that little bit of goodness also in Ryan, going on. And then we have Homelander, who is Soldier Boy's son, but raised in complete isolation, without any sort of loving parental figure, just made him into a sociopath. And also, like, throughout this, like, John, you talking about like Homelander being disgusted by the pubes, like the person that Homelander hates the most in the whole world is Homelander. Like that has been a theme from the beginning. Like he hates how internally weak he is. He hates any feelings he has. Like he has these like horrific, conversations with himself, represented, in the mirrors and stuff, because like there is no like internal peace with him, Homelander. Like he's not smart enough to run this company, but he has to be the guy in charge. You know what I mean? And he hates that, like, he does care about people. He sometimes cares about people, but then he hates that. It's just like a bunch of just a gross mess of a person, and why he's one of my favorite characters. He's like, it's just endlessly fascinating. It's so well done. And like also has the awareness that like, no, I need someone, like he has those moments. And like he goes and gets Sage to help him craft a plan, and for a brief moment does trust her judgment and sees it. But then, it's not happening fast enough. So he tosses her aside. It's not going exactly the way he wants or quickly enough. And the people aren't loving him enough. He can't share the spotlight with Ryan. He has to go into Ryan's first save, which leads to Ryan killing someone. I don't know. Like, again, it's so fascinating because Homelander deeply wants to be a good dad as well. Like he knows that what happened to him was fucked up, and he knows that it made him this way. So you get those moments of him like, oh, I just got to let him be himself, or the other, like, you could tell like Homelander thought he was being good, but also he's a maniacal, evil bastard. He's trying to teach Ryan that they're all just playthings. You shouldn't care about them. And also he's telling that to himself. Like he doesn't want to care about them. And so then when he has Ryan like rescue the girl, but then have the girl slap that producer, and sort of like turn it into this weird sadistic. Now Ryan's over, like being as messed up as that director in a sense, like it's all so well done. Sorry, I got sidetracked with all the bits, but like for the final build up to just be Ryan fighting Homelander, I feel like that would be kind of a letdown of an ending. I think we're going to get something. Well, I think we're going to get something better than that. Not necessarily. Like there probably will at some point be some sort of fist fight between Ryan and Homelander, for that like catharsis.
But that's not the end all be all. You're saying,
right? Yeah. I think that like the ultimate like point we're getting to is more to do with that generational trauma, that inability to connect with human beings and like value each other, you know, and Ryan being another person riding this line, the way Butcher's been riding the line, the way Homelander's been riding the line. You know, you have like the far extreme with Soldier Boy, who just doesn't care, has never cared, you know, made complete acceptance with himself. He's like, yeah, I'm a badass, you know, and I just kill people, you know, like none of this matters. And like when Homelander in season, I guess it's 3, like tries to have that father-son thing, and Soldier Boy like just calls him a pussy for it. It's like, it's so good. But yeah, like I'm not one of the writers. I'm not sure, but I think it's going to be more along within that theme of like, because again, we've been building up this like forgiveness for past selves, all of this stuff. You know what I mean? So it's like it's going to be somewhere more in there. While yeah, there probably will be some sort of fight between these two. I don't think that's going to be the ultimate culmination of the show.
I mean, in the end of this season, Ryan's last act is to consciously refuse to become a tool specifically training to kill Homelander. So he's already, in this season, rejected that as his identity. So it would be weird, kind of, if season 5 happens and he comes back a little older and is like, no, they were right, I have to kill my dad.
Yeah, and that whole, like, can we be good with these powers in question? You know, it'd be kind of a letdown to be like, oh, yeah, we finally, you know, we had a mom and a dad, and that made him a good person, you know, to come back and be the real superhero would be, yeah, you know, it could, like, I hope the fight's cool, but I think it would be ultimately, like, yeah, kind of a letdown of an ending.
What do you think about Homelander and Ryan, Sam?
Yeah, that's fine. I like it a lot. Anyways, we had a lot of surprises this season. No, I'm kidding. I'm trying to think of what more I could say about Homelander. I think he's an interesting character. I think that I like how we examine how he is not equipped at all to be the person in charge. He's just the person who, I guess, has the brute force to be there, to be in charge, but he's not like smart enough to be there. I like how his storyline intersects with Sage's storyline, which, you know, not like as a bit, but I was going to segue into talking about a little bit about Sage, how she comes in and helps with Homelander's plan and was right all along. I felt very vindicated. But John, what did you think about how Sage kind of ultimately complemented Homelander's arc? I mean, and he's such a bumbling fool. I think this is so interesting. He's such a bumbling fool. He would not have won unless Sage handed it to him.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, when Sage first got introduced, I, again, saw a potential for something and was like, oh, that'd be really sick. And then when they didn't really do that, I was like, oh, that's a bit of a bummer. Like, I was like, oh.
More open to things, John.
Yeah, I mean, I still like where they ended up going with it. It's just, I jumped to possible conclusions, predicting what could happen and what would be awesome. And then when it's not that, I'm a little disappointed, and I've had to meter that instinct in myself. But they introduced Sage, and I was like, oh, so she could be like a super-powered therapist to these fucked up people that have superpowers. But then she ends up just fully helping him. And like lobotomizing herself to decompress and cope. I'm very curious where she goes character-wise in season 5 too, because like, is it all a broader plan to set up Homelander for some sort of?
It very well could
failure?
be. I think you could still go there with it. Yeah.
Do you guys think that Sage is actually going to be good? Is that what you're thinking?
Well,
no, I think it's open. I think it's interesting because I don't know.
Oh man, I mean, super loved that she, like, again, is hitting those what might be like would be the woke points. Like, I'm the smartest person, all of this stuff. You know what I mean? Super intelligent, and is still bad and somehow in this supremacy thing. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, I like that it's again like intelligent, like just pure raw intelligence isn't enough to be like a full and like decent person, you know, like she is as detached and thinks as little of everyone around her as Homelander, but is like not a superpowered being, you know, and being super intelligent and having some of that and still made this character as arrogant and as conniving and as like this like as like unconcerned with life and people as Homelander. And so yeah, like I loved Sage for that fact that she wasn't there with just the power of being intelligent to help them figure out how to be good. Like being Vulcans is not the answer. Like we have to be fully human. We like all of the parts come into play. Pure intellect, pure rationality can be just as manipulated and devastating as like just the access to like an arsenal of powers. You know what I mean? So if they make Sage good without some sort of like big arc, I would be very disappointed if this is like a big master plan to like secretly take out Homelander and like, oh, I freed the people. I'm like, nah, dude.
Good is a stretch. Maybe not quite on Homelander's side.
Okay,
perhaps.
yeah.
Maybe still looking to backstab Homelander at some point. I wouldn't, and install herself even. I wouldn't. I don't know about good. I guess maybe I'll walk. If I had said that, I'm gonna go walk it back. Sometimes I say things in the heat of the moment.
No, it's okay. I might have misunderstood what y'all were saying, but I did want to articulate that I loved that she was intelligent and just as detached.
She's a good character, even if she's not a good person, let's say.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, she has that line at the end where he's like, why would you do all this? I threw you away like trash. And you still came back and finished the plan that I had originally asked you for. And she was like, to see if I could. I'm the smartest human being on the planet. And what I fantasize about is whether or not I would be able to orchestrate the fall of Rome.
Yeah. Like she says, she has that monologue where she talks about how she could solve all these world problems. Chooses not to because I think like maybe I'm grasping a little bit, but it's because it's too easy. It's like I could do that. I could do that tomorrow, but like what I don't know if I could do, like you're saying, Sean, is I don't know if I could orchestrate the fall of the President of the United States. Let's talk a little bit about the fall of the President of the United States. What a turn at the end. Oh my God. With the Victoria Newman character. I thought it was going to go one way. The whole season you think it's going to go one way. And then they give you that, they even to that screen they give you in the final episode. I'm like, oh, they're going to depict, trying to unalive the head of state. And no, that's not who gets unalived. It's Victoria herself that gets unalived. Alex, what a twist! What did you think of Victoria's end to her arc and then her arc this season?
I mean, I like
Alex. You kind of look like JD Vance. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, weird, but fair enough. So I really enjoyed Victoria Newman this season. Like again, all of them, like that whole thing of like having to navigate being in a world, where people like systems and people are interacting in ways outside of your control. Like, she's been forced now to be like Team Homelander because we got rid of Stan Edgar, although we'll see how potentially he comes back.
I loved his one episode though. That was great.
Yeah, it was really good. But, Stan Edgar has this plan to have her, in political power, not necessarily to help all Stoops, but just to help Vought, Right. But now Stan Edgar's out of the way. Victoria Newman has to survive, has to continue doing this stuff. So she has to team up with Homelander, but doesn't necessarily want to, but then sort of gets forced to. I love that at that party, where Sage can't articulate because she's lobotomized herself at this thing. And then Homelander also just like trying to push forward to like, no, I'm just in charge. I'm just a God King, like I'm going to ignore how any of this system actually works or any of it. And then throwing to Newman or like Newman, I guess, stepping up and like calling an audible for her own plans and filling that void was intense, but like well handled. And again, like sort of a lot of this, there's a lot of moments in this season where a character gets close to that, like being able to do the quote unquote right thing, like Butcher, especially with Ryan at different points, you're like, oh, is he going to knock him out with the drugged cookies? But then he like talks to him and he chooses the higher path. So we're getting this set up. they get there, and Grace is like terrified because like all of these other political machinations and other attempts to control power and stop Homelander and the superheroes are going to shit. So she's like, all we got is Ryan, but Butcher's like, no, like it has to be like his choice. We can't just like still somewhat manipulative, but like trying to value Ryan, like playing the game with him, doing this stuff. But then, Grace just like is too panicked. She fucks the whole thing up, and that leads to Ryan killing Grace. And then we have like that sort of mirrored, which that causes Butcher to give up on his humanity as well for now, possibly forever. And then we have Newman, who is now again scared and like, I just want out. I just want to be able to not be a part of all of this. Like I'm in too deep. This is too much. And like reaches out to Hughie, the one person with still like a bit of humanity that she knows. And like Hughie gets that good speech about like forgiveness is brave, mercy is brave, violence isn't brave. We do all this stuff all the time. And they are trying. There's this like brief light potential for, a way out of this with less violence. And then of course Butcher comes in with super cancer and just wrecks the whole thing. And what was, a surprising like twist ending for me. I wasn't sure where they were going to go. Again, I get back to that, like, what is V for Vendetta Part 2 actually like type of thing? Like what would this look like if Newman starts helping them? How can they possibly bring down the capitalist stand-in that is Vought and, the United States government, all this crazy stuff. But yeah, dude, that was wild to me. But overall, like a lot of the Newman stuff this season, I really enjoyed. I liked her first conversation with Hughie when he tries to throw acid on her. She's like, "Oh, you ruined my blazer. I got to be on TV in like 5 minutes. Like I could kill you right now, but I'm just saying hi. And y'all are bad at this." Her daughter's power was wild as hell. That was terrifying and surprising in the beginning, and throughout the season. But yeah, it will be. And now her daughter, throughout all these actions, is ending up right where Newman never would have wanted, back at the Red River facility where she started. So it's just like, man, the world and the systems we have suck, and
we're all monsters. Oh my god!
In our own way.
John, can I get you to talk about Newman, and then also throw in? I'm trying to move things along a little bit, but also throw in whatever the fuck her name is, my Firecracker, Starlight. No,
Firecracker.
Firecracker.
I think it's
Cracker Girl. The
Firecracker,
Cracker.
yeah.
Let's go a little bit on Newman, and then also get the Firecracker Girl, and then that is fun. That is a funny joke. If that's
I was like, that is her name.
That's like if that's intentional. If that's what they were like calling her, a cracker. That's hilarious. Okay, John, let's all the women that try to manipulate Homelander. That's kind of the theme. If you want to talk about those two.
Okay, Victoria. There's mostly agree with everything Alex said. There's an element that I don't know if he touched on it as much that I liked. Her rationale for making her daughter Zoe a super. They talk about Vought injecting children with V to make superheroes as a resource that they can monetize, and it being bad that they did it without telling anybody, without any parental consent or anything like that. And then Victoria doing it to her own daughter out of a sense of, well, the way that I keep my daughter safe from the purely physical dangers of the world is by making her a soup.
Right.
I can emotionally lead her and guide her as a mother, but if I make her indestructible and give her a superpower, then when the physical dangers of the world come for her, she will be able to take care of herself. And that's true. It's a reasonable thing for Victoria to think. But then at the same time, it makes her daughter, the only time we see Zoe is when she's fucking predator jaw bone sawing feds to pieces, right? And when she ends up back at the home. So it's like she gave her daughter powers to protect her, but then her daughter now is just a being capable of shredding another person into tiny bits and getting away with it. We haven't seen how that has affected her own character, the emotions and the way that she thinks about the world, because she hasn't had a lot of screen time, but it made Zoe physically safe, but emotionally the same kind of stuff that Victoria didn't like and hasn't liked and ostensibly was fighting against the whole time. So there's that interesting element. That there's a lot of really interesting themes in The Boys. Then Firecracker. Firecracker's crazy, both actually as a character and just as like a thing, a thematic element. She's a really interesting stand-in for that sort of like conspiratorial QAnon Alex Jones kind of thing. Her willingness to take a experimental medication to go into lactation in a misguided attempt to give Homelander anything Homelander wants is really messed up, but also understandable as a woman who, even with superpowers, is clearly still vulnerable to things. You know, she had superpowers and Starlight fucked her up as a kid. She had superpowers and her multiplication friend still got killed in front of her. You know, she has all these things that she could use to be safe, but it doesn't make her actually safe. And her response to that is to just lean into it. And then she gets sick from the medication that is allowing her to lactate, and Homelander immediately like shunts her away. Mm-hmm. And there's that moment at the end where he makes her move away, and she goes one chair down, and then he's like, and then she has to get up and move another chair down, and her brutal processing that rejection, that nothing that she did actually accomplished any of the things she thought it was accomplishing. It's fascinating. She's a really interesting character. I also love that in her first little like online video that we see of her, there's like a DeSantis bumper sticker on the wall.
Yeah. Oh God. I like such a fascinating character, and something that like when Sage goes up to her at that convention and is like, what are you selling? Like, why do you do this? Like, what are you doing? And she, you know, doesn't like, she like keeps the persona up. And then she says, she's like, I give them purpose. I'm selling them a story, you know, like she consciously aware that like what she's saying and doing is like BS, but like what I can offer these people who are dejected by society, you know what I mean? Like the show, while punches right more than left, you know, punches at the neoliberal and it punches right. Also like showed a deep like empathy for the people in there. You know what I mean? Like it like recognizes that they are also being taken advantage of by this system, but like it's going to make fun of the people who are pretending to be on their side by offering them like a fairy tale or whatever and a reason to be angry to again to continue to ossify their own power. I just was like, that little moment, I was like, dang, dude, that is wild that you have that you're a character that has the self-awareness to say this, you know, and not just like it, like know you're grifting and know how you're grifting and still grifting. And then I hope we get more of that as we move like into season 5 and see how Firecracker then deals with this world that she is like helping create.
So cliffhangers for season 4. Firecracker is coughing. She's clearly having health issues. What's going to happen in season 5 with that? Ashley, it was on the kill list at the end of the season. And, she took we didn't mention Ashley, but she's kind of barely hurt. She had a clear kind of concurrent arc with A-Train, and she clearly chose to stick with. She's chosen Va over everything because she kind of feels backed into. So, anyways, we got a cliffhanger with Ashley. She's taking the medicine so she can stay alive. What's going to happen with her? And obviously the big cliffhanger is the boys, are all taken into custody at the end of the season. John, I think Alex was talking last. John, what do you think about all these cliffhangers going into season 5? Obviously, I think it's safe to say we're going to watch season 5. What do you think about going into season 5 with all these cliffhangers?
I'm excited for what they're going to do. I don't know what it's going to be. They've got this viral plague that might show up and kill all soups and maybe humans too. Are we going to do a COVID-19 thing? They've done vaccine comments in this season.
Mm-hmm.
They have a couple Firecracker is an anti-vax person.
Mm-hmm.
She says they kill a Newsmax anchor type guy. Yeah, I forget his name.
Cameron Cole or something.
That's right. And there's a behind background noise kind of news report on a TV in a later scene that's the excuse they give for him being dead is that he died of heart complications from a flu vaccine.
Right.
Butcher is creating this anti-soup genocide bug. Is the idea that it can be confined to soups just another illusion in their ideas of control?
That was my idea, that it was just going to be soups, but they were worried about creating a superhero pandemic or whatever. And that's where I thought
they were worried about killing all soups.
Yeah, like a genocide kind of thing, yeah.
But my thinking is that even that understanding of, well, it'll be a plague that kills all soups. Even that will be they'll release it or something, and then Hughie will get sick because I guess it kills him because he had V.
Yeah.
So, but somebody who hasn't had V will get sick from the bug, and they'll be like, oh shit, this plague that we created is transferable to humans, to non-superpowered people. That would be a crazy thing to do. The season 5 has this overarching global pandemic aspect to it.
Yeah.
They can do a lot of shit.
I'm excited to see where it goes. Alex, all these cliffhangers, the boys are all in custody. Butcher is fully given, which again I haven't really talked about that much. What a cool reveal, Butcher storyline. They did Fight Club, and it was still really cool. Butcher's kind of gone rogue a little bit. The Homelander is basically the de facto president of the United States. The boys are in custody. Lots of big what ifs going into next season.
Yeah, I know it's definitely I don't think any season I've been able to predict where it was going or because again all of them have gotten pretty wild, taking some turns that I didn't expect.
Right.
But yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see. The part of me wonders are we going to get a time jump, so that we can deal with some stuff like this?
Mm-hmm.
Or are we just going right back into it? Again, it's how, even if they did a longer season, without knowing what they're going to wrap up to, it's hard to imagine in one season getting a wrap up from where they are now, without it. Yeah. I mean, it'll probably be a downer. I would imagine, again, I don't think we're getting V for Vendetta Part 2 from this. But still, Stan Eggers in the Wind, another one of those. We've let some of the soups out of the asylum and deputized all soups. We've made it a full, militarized thing, so it's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be interesting to see what they do and what other stuff, have they already written it? How much are they writing? What other real world things might influence how it goes? Will be interesting to see.
Yeah, the season 3 came out in 2022, but they didn't incorporate January 6th until this season. So
right.
So yeah, I don't know. I'm excited to watch it. I will watch, and especially with the knowledge the next season is going to be the last. So we've talked about it a couple times throughout this podcast, but just knowing that they have an ending in mind, it's not like just running out the clock. It's like the show's still very popular, I think. So the fact that they know they're going to end it the next season, very excited. I guess I need to go watch Gen V now to fill that void. I probably won't do that, but I need to fill that void.
Yeah,
I'm excited
watch all the stuff. I'll probably watch it now.
I don't know what
There's so much more. There's so many more places I feel like we could go with this discussion, but we've been going for a while now. So I just appreciate you, John, Lein, Alex McKellar, for joining us to discuss The Boys. Obviously, go back and watch our separate a long time ago when we talked about The Acolyte. We also recorded that. Check that out. And thank you so much, guys. Always a pleasure.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
it's always fun to be
It's a
here.
good time.
All right, that's our show. I'd like to thank John Lein and Alex McKellar for joining me this week. Next week, we're going to be talking about House of the Dragon, so make sure you're subscribed here on YouTube. Follow us wherever you get your podcasts. We're going to be talking about Joker 2, Rings of Power, a lot more coming up this season on the Film Fan Club Show. I'm Sam Carrico. Thanks so much for joining me. I'll see you next time.